What is up, everybody? Welcome to an MMA Crunch Time. A little early here, a little bit early for the East Coast here, and I guess everybody, it's everywhere. But
I'm
we have
usually up
UFC.
this early, Mike. I
I,
do a show 11 o'clock in the morning,
ugh, gross.
Monday through
No,
Friday. This is normal for me.
yeah, it's normal for you, not normal for me. I'm a late waker upper on the weekends. But hey, UFC on ABC 5, I think is what it is. Some nice fights, and I will say nice from a fantasy standpoint and nice from a overall entertainment standpoint. Would you agree? Because you know what, as crazy and close these fights are, there's going to be some 700 scores out there this week, I imagine. I mean, the crazy things are going to happen. I think there'll be some massive moments too. You're going to see some highlight knockouts.
This is a slate that's riddled with untrustworthy fighters and low-level fights and possibly, inexperienced fighters that maybe are better than they used to be. It's Variant City, and the spreads of the fights outside of, even the main event with Topuria EMMETT. Topuria's 78% implied win probability, so that's not like absurd. We have a bunch of 2-to-1s, but most of these fights are going to be competitive. If the underdog won, you wouldn't be shocked. And we have a lot of fights that are favored to end inside the distance. So I think this is a card that is highlighted from a DFS perspective more by fights and less by fighters.
Yeah.
And I've built 50 lineups that pretty much target heavily certain fights, but the mix on which side you go on really depends on your lineup construction. So I'm kind of looking at those fights that are probably going to end early, and I have a lot of each side.
Oh, and there's a lot that are expected to do so. And even the fights that are expected to go like to a decision, like I'll just throw out, for instance, Ricci and Robertson, like that one, if there's a 30-27, that's competitive with a optimal lineup with pure grappling too. So it is a little bit of a crazy slate, but this broadcast brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. If you're in a legal sports betting state, take advantage of their awesome bonus offer. New customers get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets. Terms and conditions apply. You were talking about all the close fights and whatnot. I'm wondering what the lineup build is. What is the chalk build on a slate like this? Because myself, I'm getting a little off the beaten track, trying to avoid some of the ownership spots and hope they bust. But I don't know like how people build. Are they starting with like leverage, taking a leverage like a Lane or a Sadiq Ress, or are they going to Van? Earlier in the week, Van was showing a hell of a lot more ownership.
Yeah, that fight, that to me, it's weird for me to say. That's the most interesting fight to me on the slate from a DFS perspective, because I'm not sure if the betting lines are properly reflecting how much variance there actually is in this fight. So just to go through the fights that are going to be popular and probably should be targeting, which I'm down with that also. We're talking about the Tafa Lane fight. We're talking about the Brundage Cedricus Dumas fight.
Mm-hmm.
The Peak Mariscal fight right in that mid-range. To some extent, there's like Santos Onama, Alan Silva. And then obviously like the main event, I guess. But I think those are the main fights that are heavily favored, or decently favored.
You're finally doing what I do, putting them in tiers. Like those are the tier 1 fights. Those are the ones that are going to have the most action and most opportunity for high scoring. But what's terrifying is that second tier that we'll get to in a bit could outscore the first tier by a mile too. Like some of the ceiling wins. It's that type of slate. But
right, we have fights like Rebecca Radzhabov, Ricci Robertson that could feature some grappling, that even in a decision at their prices could end up being optimal. Remember, it's 13 fights. It's not that small. It's not a small slate. It's a mid-sized slate. So we could leave some salary on the table, right? There's more options, but the spreads of the fights are much closer. So it's more likely that you may not need 50K salary. And of course, as you build with more salary, you get into more duplication. And there are plenty of underdogs that could put up 100 points. I mean, in a first round knockout or something. So 48-4 lineups, 48-8 lineups. I mean, kind of salary doesn't matter as much as you think it does. And I don't care as much about win probability. Like to me, the guys that the fighters that I have the least exposure to are like Macy Barber at 7,300, Jack Jenkins at 7,600.
I'll tell you something interesting about Macy. If she can revert back to the old school and like, listen, you've got a girl in Rebus who's definitely been hurt before. Okay, Rebus should take her down and control her and then put up a zillion points on the mat, right? But like, I understand why you don't want to invest in Barber. You know what I mean? Like, she could break the slate open. She was like a potent finisher when she came in. But
she'd have to get a knockout. She's not going to submit. It's not going to be a submission finish. It's just more the fact that Rebus has been knocked out. So if Barber could keep it on the feet, I mean, it's a much more competitive matchup. I mean, she's plus 350 inside the distance. That's not that bad. I mean,
in a woman's fight, it's usually plus 500, plus 600.
Right. So, I mean, like Josh Emmett has a lower inside the distance line than Macy Barber. So I get it. But out of the underdogs that have more like win equity than finish equity, I'm looking at Barber and Jenkins and Radzabov, who could get there via grappling, but less of a finisher. I'm looking at a little bit like Terman, although I think that fight has a little bit more variance than people think. But that dude, Joshua Van is 21 years old. Okay, he's been what? He's been training for what? 18 months? I mean, we're talking about this is a last minute replacement. Not that, I mean, a week ago. I mean, remember, Zalgis's fight got canceled last week. I know Zumagulov, the way that he fights is typically not conducive to DFS, gets into a lot of split decisions. He doesn't put stamps on rounds, but Zumagulov has been fighting like top 15 fighters for years. It's quite possible that Joshua Van shouldn't be in a UFC octagon.
He was on the trajectory to make it to the UFC, though, Blender. You know, we have a lot of these guys that come in late last, minute notice. And Josh Van was on his way, right? He was going to be on Contender Series. He was going, you know what I mean? The path was there for him, but he got the shortcut. And it's like his skill set probably hasn't developed, but I still think his scoring is going to be there. Like against Zumagulov, isn't there built-in win equity? But the point is that I don't care that much about win equity. I like the fact that he's plus 275 inside the distance, but the way that Van gets there is going to be, it has to be a knockout. I mean, he's not a grappler or anything. And Zumagulov could wrestle. He's well-rounded enough. I know he's plus 350 inside the distance, but I just like targeting. This is the general concept of targeting fights where the lack of information, the lack of experience means that the line after watching the fight should have been like 3x in one direction, where either like Zumagulov is washed and Van smokes him, or Van is not ready and Zumagulov just takes him to town. So like, well, nobody's going to play Zumagulov. Nobody should.
No, I mean,
nobody should.
Mike, I don't see anyone on the slate being single-digit owned.
Oh, I know, but I think the smaller the field, he's just going to be even less and less.
Yeah, I think you're right. He will be the lowest owned favorite on the slate. I think him and maybe Magny.
And I considered the same thing. Like, I'm like, if that variance goes where he should have been minus 500, minus 600 in this spot, what does it look like? But at the end of the day, he kind of like will control you against the cage and then maybe rip you to the mat, try to
but you have to understand, Mike, the fights we've seen him do that were against good people. I mean, like his strength of schedule is like in even matchups when we always see Zumagulov in this mid 8K range, right? The 7,800.
Patty Pimblett here now, Blender. We're not factoring that into our model now.
Oh, the bowl cut. We have the bowl cut has to be in the model. I gotta up that up.
Yeah,
right?
Yep.
And then on the like outside of Van, like the thing that Cedricus Dumas and Austin Lane.
Oh, that's where I was going next. That's exactly where I was going.
This is the epitome of they either get knocked out or they get knocked or they knock someone else out. Like, dude, these guys are not going to score well in decisions. Like, this is just due to the fact that the fight is most likely to end inside the distance. Same thing for the Mariscal Peak fight. Like, these are not good fighters. I mean, even Justin Tafa isn't like he's experienced, but he's not technically brilliant. Cody Brundage could crumble after 3 minutes, right? I mean, he has 3 minutes of cardio. And he has no chin, but it's not like Cedricus Dumas. He's a former street fighter, right? I mean, I don't know how much of a ground game he has. Austin Lane could take advantage of like Tafa. You want to take down, but I mean, Austin Lane is essentially a converted football player. Like we're not dealing. The whole overarching theme of this slate is that most of these fights don't deal with people that are very technical, and we're not going to see chess match types of fights. A lot of these fights are going to look really sloppy.
You'll probably know exactly where you are after the first fight because
I've like 70% of my exposure on the first fight.
I know it's absolutely terrifying, but let me talk about the Tafa side of things. He's going to be higher owned. So like Austin Lane fighting, I always look at why is the UFC booking a fight, right? Austin Lane from the Jacksonville area, drafted by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Huge reach advantage. Wouldn't you imagine Justin Tafa would have been booked for one of those Australian cards, Blender, or one of those Aussie themed cards where you have Max Holloway and you have the Tafa brothers, and why are they shipping him all the way to Jacksonville? I didn't understand that one. And again, for fantasy wise, it makes me think Lane has a little bit more. I think Lane has more past the scoring over 3 rounds than Tafa does. Tafa probably he's so limited. He's going to have to score that knockout at 8,800 to be perfect.
But it could be one of those fights, Mike. I mean, this is with the inexperience of Lane and Dumas. Like Tafa could win in 12 seconds. I mean, or it could be one of those things where he doesn't get a quick win bonus, but he just starches him. I mean, it ends up with up against the cage, you get 70 significant strikes, ground and pound finish, and first round victory. He has 122 points. I mean, like it could look like that. You know what? It could look like that the other way also.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the reason of targeting these fights, because like I'm not all that enamored on like the Emmers Jenkins fight or even the Rebecca Radzabov fights, like Ricci Robertson. These fights we typically target with wrestlers. It just seems like there's so many fights on this slate that are going to end early that I need to have pieces of them. I need to have multiple pieces. Brendan Allen is a minus 120 inside the distance. We have Santos at 9,200. Like he could.
How are you handling
he could break the slate. He could win in the second round and break the slate with 135 points. The way that he grapples.
Talk to me about that fight, because Gabriel Santos almost broke the slate. If he had the win points, he would have been well over value last fight out. And he's got that typical, 5 takedowns. He's shooting takedowns. But David Onama, I mean, if you're ever talking about a buy low spot on any other slate that didn't have this many action fights, Blender, I would love to target Onama. Like,
I think Santos won. I thought he won against Lamont Woodfree.
I did too. I mean, he got screwed. It was hometown cooking. But I like looking at spots and thinking of these guys as like a stock or a commodity here. David Onama, you're buying low. But this is a tough spot to buy low on him, right? Like he's going to be on his back at least once or twice. And he's still powerful. He's still got volume. David Onama would have been a guy if you had a 3-round kickboxing match. He might have scored a pretty decent with volume. But at the last fight, that was the downfall of James Krause, if you remember that particular fight. But
well, I mean, Onama. The good thing about him is that he'll come forward.
yeah.
So I mean, the types of fights that I'm looking to target are like Onama could hurt Santos, but I mean, I don't think Santos is going to have to chase Onama around the octagon in order to take him down. I think he's going to come right to him. I think that the opposite of that is the other fight in that range, the Allen Bruno Silva fight. I think Brendan Allen is going to be a little overowned, and I'm not sure. Like Bruno Silva is a power puncher that typically is counter striking more than attacking. He does have cardio issues, so he may take it a little slow. I just see the Allen Silva fight, especially with Allen. Allen definitely has the ground advantage in this matchup, but we've seen Allen just not take advantage of those. He uses wrestling when he needs to, not as a priority of his strategy. And although the line it's favored to end inside the distance, I just think in comparison to other fights in this range, I think this fight could be a little bit more of a stalemate longer. And maybe we don't see a finish until round 2 or round 3, if there is one.
This would have been definitely one that I said, this is the blender special that just fade it, right? Fade it and pray. Hopefully it goes to, a decision. Allen gets a decision because, I mean, again, you probably don't need win equity, but Silva kickboxing at range isn't going to score well either over 3 rounds. So somebody in a YouTube chat said, tell us about Mariscal and Lane. We hit on Lane. Mariscal
Trevor Peak, I watched him
fight. Wait. Do it. The hatchet. He does it. I mean, come on. The dude is a beast. He's got one tempo. It's go forward and use that hatchet.
Like, who punches that way? That's just stupid. I guess it works. I guess it works for him against his competition. But Mariscal, take a look at who he's fought. He's fought actual UFC fighters. He's fought in Yusuf Zalal and Steve, your boy Steve Garcia.
I love him.
Right? But he fought Pat Sabatini, I believe.
Yeah, it's all UFC caliber fighters, and not just these.
UFC he got knocked out by Joe Anderson Brito, but I mean, other people have also. So
that fight itself is unbelievable for the context of the slate too, right? You could see multiple knockdowns in the first round. You could see Mariscal go in there, lose the first round, and then do that take over the fight because Pete gasses out, and then he gets 3 takedowns, and then you pitter patter, and he scores a zillion points in the second and third. This fight is very interesting for the context of the slate, but ownership is all towards Peak. I was hoping it would go back to Mariscal a bit, but
why?
He's got takedown. He can go for take. Listen, Peak's got taken down.
You're talking about Mariscal. You're not talking about Peak.
Yeah, no.
I want Mariscal to be lower owned. I mean, Peak's path to 100 points essentially is a first round knockout. And my attitude when it comes to, I mean, I'm still playing plenty of Peak. I'm still playing plenty of the fight. Is that when the narrower the path to 100 points, the more ownership that's there, the less I want to have. I don't mind going after those guys when they're low owned, but not when they're high owned. And I think Mariscal is a better overall fighter than Peak. I mean, it's not like he's a prospect or anything. He's over 30 years old.
In 2 tracked fights, how many times do you think Peak was taken down in his 2 tracked fights that he won by knockout in both of those fights? How many times?
2? It's a sample size of 2.
4. 2 sample size of 2. 4 times each fight. So there is an issue there with his takedown defense. And it's really because he's coming forward, right? Throwing these crazy strikes that he's open for the hips and people are taking him down. So there's a path where Mariscal should just do that in control. You don't need to go for a finish if you're Mariscal. Just control the guy, right? Cook him.
And also, have we seen much of Peak's cardio?
Not really. It's all heart. I got to be honest. There's certain fighters that have cardio and then just have that it factor of heart, right? That they just keep
that
pushing
their
forward.
cardio is obviously gone, but they managed to just stay in
somehow. Yeah,
right?
like this, like stay off me with my hatchet. I'll hatchet arm you. We really haven't hit on one fight. We're about 10 minutes out before lock. Everything's holding true. Got all the alerts on in case anything happens. But I got to ask you about the Ricci and Robertson, because you and I know what's going to happen. One girl's going to get a dominant first round. We're going to be like, she's on the path to 100 and oh my God, she got taken down and now she's getting controlled. That's how it happens. But let me tell you about something. These two ladies are so high level jiu-jitsu, and they're probably going to test it there. There's a world where it turns into the kickboxing and it negates, but I don't think that happens. It's Jillian Robertson, Blender, and there's a world where there's multiple reverses at 6 points each that can add up for you. Like I'm scratching and clawing, okay, but I'm just trying to say there's a world where these ladies do score well. My problem is there's no finish equity. Like they're gonna.
Well, I think there's more finish equity on Robertson's side than on Ricci's side, but I think I think this fight is more. I mean, I'm under on this fight. I think this fight is more about how much control Ricci can get, and then out of the blue, Robertson wins. I mean, like to me, Robertson's. I think it's more. I'm more likely to play Ricci than Robertson because I think it's more likely that Ricci is on top and Robertson is playing off the guard, trying to reverse or throw up submissions. And unless you get one of those submissions, all you're doing is giving up points to your opponent. So I think Ricci has a higher ceiling in a decision, but Robertson, I think, has a little bit more finish equity. But in general, I have this fight projected owned Ricci 22%, Roberts, both around 22%. So 44% of the field has this fight. I'm like half of that. So
you nailed it, and I'm terrified because what did Ricci do last time out? She did well. No, against Polyana Viana. Okay, remember that fight? We were like, oh, Viana has finish equity in this spot. She took her down, played in guard, and racked up a ton of points by just control time. She didn't really do anything else. So that's what this fight looks like more. I'm going to go to the YouTube chat real quick where it says Ricci or Santos. If you had to put one last piece in, I have 9,200. Just hit Santos. Better grappling. Don't need to reinvent the wheel. I mean,
barring anything else in the rest of your lineup or your ownership or whatever. I mean, Santos is minus 226 money line, plus 130 inside the distance at 28% ownership. I mean, just in a vacuum, Santos is more likely to score more points than Ricci. Doesn't mean he will, but he's more likely to.
There's a fight right there that you and I just talked about, Ricci and Robertson, but Rebecki and Radzhabov. This might be one of the X factors on the whole slate, because if there's a finish, and listen, Radzhabov broke a slate last time out.
Yeah, but he was fighting a guy that had a sample size of one fight where he just basically attempted 20 takedowns.
But he got hurt. He got hurt in the third round, and you had to clinch your butt that he didn't get finished in that third round. Rebecki also didn't show up last time. Like, he didn't even get off the bus against the dude from Boston who just got cut and beat by Chase Sherman. That was concerning. But this is a fight where Blender, and I hope you would say this too, there might be control time for each guy. Exactly. And
I'm under on this fight. I have more Rebecki than Radzhabov because I think Radzhabov is overowned and Rebecki is efficiently owned. But yeah, I'm targeting the fight. I mean, it's kind of just straightforward to me. I'm targeting the fights that are more likely to end inside the distance and more likely to be sloppy. More likely, this. I think it's going to be entertaining card. It's going to be very sloppy. In the chat, someone asked if Dumas is going to be lower owned than Brundage. Yes. I think I have Brundage at 29% projected owned, and I have Dumas at 18 to 20 in that range. But obviously, it's two different price points or anything like that. You know what fight we haven't really talked about?
Yep, Magny and Rowe.
No,
don't say Emmers.
No, how about the main event? Do you think?
No.
Do you think that Topuria? What does Topuria have to do in order to be optimal at 9,500? Outside of a first round KO. Do you think he wrestles enough?
Mirror what's his name did.
Good old what's his
Rodriguez.
name?
Yeah, my favorite fighter. What's his name? Rodriguez. Just mirror exactly what he did. I think Liam nailed it best, who writes up for us on RotoGrinders. Liam picks fights. Topuria is a better version of Josh Emmett, right? I mean, he's more lethal. He's powerful. Josh Emmett would always be, everything's like 1-2. It's power shots, right? He's got the wrestling in his back pocket, but Topuria uses the wrestling, uses the pace. Josh Emmett doesn't do that. What does he have to do to hit optimal? I think get second round finish with that typical Topuria pace, right, Blender? I mean, he's got to do his wrestling. He's got to do his volume type.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think it really all depends on the grappling. I mean, look at the lines on some of these fights. Randy Brown plus 120 inside the distance. Santos plus 130. Allen minus 120. Tafa minus 160. Brundage minus 115. Pete minus 110. They're all cheaper than Topuria. The only reason Topuria is minus 280 inside the distance because he has 2 extra rounds to work with. So, like, if this gets to the third round, 9,500, it's quite possible. It's quite possible, Mike. We get to the main event, and there's already been 7 fighters that have scored over 105 points.
Okay, yeah.
And then you're looking and go, well, Topuria needs I don't know what he needs to do a lot. And several of those 105 plus point scores are from dogs. And then you have like a Santos or an Allen or a Tafa, and it's like, dude, you couldn't even fit in. Like, if Topuria would have to put up like 130.
But the problem is
the pricing makes
you
sense.
can fit him so easily on this slate. So it's like the typical person building one lineup is going to jam him in.
Of course. I mean, I have him at 48% projected owned, and I have his because of his minus 280 inside the distance, I have his ownership as about efficient.
Yeah.
Like he should be around that owned. But of course, with a 50% owned fighter, it just reduces the amount of combinations of lineups you can make that are going to be less duplicated. So I am under the field on Topuria just for the sake of I can make as equally expected value type of lineups that are just less duplicated. Like similar win probability lineups that just are, 3-4 times less duplicated.
Let me tell you somebody I wanted to back long term, and especially because he fought my boy Don Shanis last, was Jack Jenkins. But that fight, I can't believe how sharp the market is. They hammered Emmers, and Emmers is really a value, like for a money line standpoint. Is Emmers a cash play? I mean, because of his 65% money line equity. I mean, somehow he is, but it's like Jenkins, I think, is going to be a fighter that's going to need to grow in the UFC. He's got pace, he's got volume striking, but Emmers is always and has been crucially undervalued in the UFC. Now he's getting a lot of love in this spot.
Well, it's just going to be my luck the past seemingly 2 or 3 months that, the guy that what's going to happen, Jack Jenkins is going to get a quick win bonus or something. No. It's going to be something. It's always something. It
snaps his leg.
Always something. The guys that I don't have much of. Jenkins is going to get a first-round knockout. We're going to see, Tabitha Ricci is going to score 7 million points. Neil Magny's or Phil, that fight is going to be some nutso stuff is going to happen.
Randy Brown, 4 knockdowns.
No, well, at least Randy Brown against Weldon Turman, that wouldn't surprise me, right? Like that fight is Randy Brown's plus 120. That wouldn't it's not nutso, but he has a smaller window. Like I can see that.
Yeah, I mean,
the question is what shenanigans happen this week where there's a no contest or the referee screws up? Like when we're in Florida, dude, Mike, we're in Florida. Don't go to the judges in Florida.
I know you just killed me with the last week with the referee stoppage. That one sucked because the guy was literally going to go to sleep, and
I had Argueta in my best lineup.
I think everybody should have. That one's frustrating. And then you saw what the referees did. They played it safe the rest of the night too. They were like, let a guy literally. What was the throw from the poor kid Hernandez? He throws him to the mat. He gets knocked out, and then he takes like 7 punches to the head while he's unconscious, and they don't, you know what I mean? Don't autocorrect that hard. Come on, guys. The guy was out cold.
Did you see the head kick knockout from last night from PFL?
I did. I wanted to touch on that, even though it's not a PFL show. Sada Busai, amazing. What do you think about that fight where they had a best friend that was like a groomsman in his wedding, for Christ's sake? Yeah, they had to fight each other. And when I say fight, they didn't fight. They just
they sparred. Okay,
yeah.
I saw that on Twitter. I wasn't watching last night. I was just looking at clips on Twitter.
I know. I mean, you would have said don't touch it. It was like minus 350 to go to a decision, or over 2.5 rounds, something like that.
We need to get those PFL DFS slates on Fridays.
We absolutely do. Next week, we end up having Sean Strickland. It's 2023. We need Sean Strickland in every single main event, apparently, versus Abus Magomedov. That one was not on my bingo card of fights to main event or even come close to being put together. But, you know, I was looking at that one the other day, and only 12 fights. There might be some spots on it, though. I mean, Kevin Lee's back. I don't know if you remember him. He perennial guy that used to crap. Although there's a banger there. Benoit Saint Denis and Ismail Bonfim. That is a banger. We are signing off here for MMA Crunch Time. We will see you guys next week.
You do this too quick to me, and I'm not ready for it. And you know, I'm just gonna have to kill time while I look for your outro. And what I would do.
We don't need to know. I love you.
No, just be like, may all your cards be live. I hope that everyone else takes second while I win first. Peace out, everybody. Bye.
I like it.